It makes me think back to Queen Elizabeth I in, 1589.
Hmm.
She saw William Lee's knitting machine, this amazing invention, but her first thought wasn't just, wow, progress. It was, hold on, what about my knitters, their jobs?
Exactly. That same tension, that push and pull between, new technology and the people it affects, it feels incredibly relevant right now with AI, maybe even more so.
Right, because the pace is just relentless. And sometimes I think we get so dazzled by what the tech could do that we kind of jump in feet first.
We do. There's this temptation to see technology, especially disruptive tech, as the immediate fix. But rushing in without really thinking through the human side,
Yeah.
well, that's a gamble, a big one.
And that's really what we want to dig into today, isn't it? This idea of a bots first approach. Assuming the answer is always more tech, deploy it now.
Yeah, without necessarily asking, what does this mean for our people,
Yeah.
for our customers?
Precisely. So our mission here is to kind of unpack why that can really backfire and explore maybe a more balanced, more human-centric path forward. We'll be leaning on some of our own internal thinking, the stuff around what we call worker one.
Okay, yeah. And maybe a good place to start is just looking at the track record of these big tech projects. It's pretty sobering, actually.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like that Gartner survey from 2022,
Mhm.
only 54% of AI projects actually make it into production. Think about that. Nearly half.
Right. All that investment, all that effort for something that just fizzles out in the pilot stage. It's like buying a whole new set of tools and leaving almost half of them rusting in the box.
And it's not a new problem either. Go back to 2018, over $1 trillion spent on digital transformation.
$1 trillion.
Yeah. And something like 70% of those projects were considered failures. They just didn't deliver.
Wow. 70%. That's almost $750 billion basically down the drain.
Yeah.
It just screams that, throwing tech at a problem without understanding the human integration piece, it's just incredibly costly.
So who actually ends up paying for these missteps?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's usually not the tech vendors.
Right.
The real impact lands on the employees. Maybe their jobs change drastically or disappear. It lands on customers dealing with glitchy systems or poor service. And ultimately, it hits the shareholders too.
Yeah, it really hammers home that fundamental point. Technology should be there to augment us, right?
Yeah.
To help humans do things better, not just replace them wholesale.
Absolutely. It should be a tool, a powerful one, but a tool in human hands.
Which brings us straight to the value of those human hands, right?
Yeah.
Human capital. It feels like sometimes in all the excitement about algorithms and automation, we kind of forget how incredibly valuable our people are.
That is such a critical point. I mean, think about a natural ecosystem like a forest or a reef.
Right.
Every part plays a role. But there are certain keystone species. If you remove them, the whole system can start to unravel. In the workplace, you could argue human capital is that keystone species. It's the core.
That makes sense. It reminds me actually of the Luddites back in the 19th century. We often think of them as just anti-technology, but it was more nuanced, wasn't it? They were protesting how the machines were being brought in ways that hurt them, devalued their skills.
Exactly. It wasn't about the machines themselves. It was about the implementation, the seeming disregard for the workers' well-being. And, we're seeing echoes of that concern today.
How so?
Well, look at employee engagement. That 2024 Gallup poll, only 32% of U.S. workers feeling actively engaged. That's low. It suggests something about how we're navigating this tech-driven change isn't quite landing right for a lot of people.
And it's not just about feeling checked out, is it? There are real costs. I saw something from Harvard Business Review.
Yeah.
About industries going through major disruption, job dissatisfaction up 28%, and mental health costs. Those jumped 18%. That's significant.
It really is. It's not just numbers on a page. It's people struggling. It kind of reminds me of Rachel Carson, warning about messing with natural systems without understanding the ripple effects.
Right. Silent Spring.
Yeah. If you rush to replace people with tech, without a plan, without support, you can fracture the whole organizational ecosystem. You lose that institutional knowledge, the mentorship, the creativity, things tech just can't replicate.
Okay, so if the bots first approach is risky and ignoring the human element is damaging, what's the better way? How do we prioritize people properly?
Well, I think it starts with a mindset shift. Really seeing people not as costs, but as assets to be developed.
So continuous learning, valuing their input.
Exactly. Providing opportunities to grow, actually listening to their experience on the ground, and crucially, integrating technology as a tool for them to enhance what they do, not just cut them out of the loop. Think of tech as like A helpful tailwind, not a hurricane.
And that ties into this worker one idea we've been developing internally, doesn't it? Can you unpack that a bit? What does worker one really mean in this context?
Sure. So worker one is kind of our shorthand for the type of professional we think thrives in this environment. It's not just about being skilled or adaptable, though that's part of it. It's also about being compassionate, community-minded.
Okay.
It moves beyond just me and my tasks to thinking about how we connect, how we support each other, how we build a stronger collective.
You used that analogy before, the fungi in the forest, the mycorrhizal fungi.
Ah, yeah. I love that analogy. These fungi create this incredible underground network connecting the roots of different trees.
Right, sharing nutrients and stuff.
Exactly.
Mhm.
They share resources, support each other, make the whole forest more resilient. A worker one kind of does that inside an organization. They're not just doing their job, they're actively helping others learn, sharing knowledge, building up the team.
And there's data backing this up, right? This idea that connection matters for adapting to change.
Oh, absolutely. Deloitte had a report in 2023. It found that organizations with more cross-functional teamwork, more peer mentoring, they saw a 33% higher success rate in adopting change.
33%, that's huge.
It is. And it really shows that it's often the human connections, the shared learning that make the difference, not just the shiny new software itself.
So the worker one philosophy is really about ditching the old view of employees as, I don't know, disposable parts?
Yeah, precisely. And shifting towards cultivating individuals who can grow with the technology and who actually help the whole organization learn and adapt together.
Building resilience through people, not just buying it off the shelf.
You got it. Resilience is nurtured, it's grown. You invest in your people, foster that community, and you build something much more robust for whatever comes next.
Thinking about that resilience, it makes you look at the whole organization as an ecosystem. You mentioned beehives before as a contrast to typical corporate reactions.
Right. Thinking about a beehive facing a threat, maybe a harsh winter or a predator, what do?
Huh. They don't lay off half the bees.
Exactly. They don't just shrink, they adapt. They communicate like crazy, shift roles, work together differently to protect the colony and find solutions.
Yeah.
It's all about cooperation and adapting as a unit.
Which, let's be honest, isn't always the first instinct in a corporate setting when disruption hits. Often it's cut costs, reduce headcount.
That's often the knee-jerk reaction, yeah.
Yeah.
Shrink to survive. But maybe the more powerful approach is to think about regeneration, about growth, about building capability, not just subtraction.
And this is where some of the internal work we've been doing comes in. Things like TAO.ai, Human Potential Index, Azure.m. How do they fit into building this smarter ecosystem?
Yeah, they're designed to be pieces of that puzzle. They work together. So
Wow.
TAO.ai, for instance, that's our internal platform, really focused on peer-to-peer intelligence, like making it super easy for people to share what they know and learn from each other directly.
Okay. Creating learning networks, basically.
Exactly. And we've seen some really cool results, like peer learning becoming almost 3 times more efficient.
Yeah.
Onboarding for critical skills happening 40% faster, just by connecting people better.
Wow, 40% faster onboarding. That's significant. And the other two, Human Potential Index and Azure.
So Human Potential Index is about mapping growth potential against resilience, like understanding not just what skills someone has now, but their trajectory and how that plugs into the whole organization's ability to adapt.
Seeing the potential, not just the current state.
Right. And Azure is all about well-being. Simple idea, really. People who feel supported, healthy, not burned out. They're more creative, more focused, more productive. So prioritizing well-being isn't just nice to have. It actually builds a stronger foundation for performance.
It shifts the focus from just squeezing out productivity today to actually nurturing the conditions for sustained high performance. And there's a business case here too, isn't there? Investing in people pays off.
Absolutely. World Economic Forum data shows companies that invest in reskilling see 30% higher retention.
30%.
Yeah. People stick around when they feel invested in, when they see a path for growth. It reinforces that idea organizations aren't machines with interchangeable parts. They're living ecosystems. They need nurturing.
Which really throws the potential long-term damage of cutting too deep into sharp relief, doesn't it? That short-term cost saving can be really short-sighted.
It really can. It's like those old stories of kings in crisis who dismiss their most trusted advisors, right?
Yeah, the ones who tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Exactly. And then they're left vulnerable. In business today, those experienced employees, they hold so much knowledge, so much understanding of the culture. Losing them is a huge blow.
And the direct financial cost of failed tech projects, failed transformations.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Oh, it's staggering. McKinsey put the average cost for big companies somewhere between $100 million and $500 million
$500 million.
for a failed project.
Right.
And that's just a direct cost.
Yeah.
Think about the damage to the brand. Losing customer trust, losing all that institutional knowledge walking out the door.
It makes it so clear why a tech-first, people-last approach is just asking for trouble. Because the tech doesn't implement itself, does it?
Nope. It needs people.
Yeah.
People to integrate it, people to understand the culture, people to mentor others, people to sort out the inevitable conflicts, people to make sure it's used ethically.
Right. Tech lacks all that human stuff.
Precisely. So yeah, layoffs might look like a quick win on the balance sheet short term, but the long-term pain, disengagement, higher turnover later, projects stalling because the expertise is gone, it's often a false economy, a really painful one.
It's such a different picture compared to organizations that really treat their people like partners in change. Where they validate the tech carefully, listen to feedback, adapt, and focus on lifting people up.
That's the heart of it, really. Investing in your people to co-create with technology. That's not just a nice idea, it feels like a requirement for actual long-term success. You can't just buy a black box and hope it solves everything.
So maybe the final thought for you listening right now is this. When you look at your organization, how is it treating its people in this age of rapid change? Are they seen as, well, kind of expendable resources? Or are they essential partners in actually building the future?
That's a really crucial question to sit with. And look, if you're interested in digging deeper into this, into how to build those more resilient, human-first ecosystems, we'd love to connect, explore how we can co-create that future. Check out our website. The link's right there in the description.
Because ultimately, building what comes next, it's not just about algorithms. It's got to be collaborative. It needs human wisdom, empathy, our collective strength to adapt. It's about creating something lasting, an ecosystem, not just chasing the next tech trend.